Hello and welcome to the channel. Today we're going to be discussing the Ofcom Online Nation 2024 report. It's a huge PDF, 120, 130 plus pages, going through a lot of data and analysis up until kind of May, June this year of how internet usage, behaviours, feelings have changed, predominantly in the UK market over the past year on year. But obviously, this kind of data we can use and extrapolate and loosely apply across different segments, different countries as well for similar kind of internet usage. So joining me today to go through two or three of high level top points on this, I have Thierry, SALT's Head of Data Insight. Hi Thierry.
How are we, Dan? How are you doing?
I'm doing good, thank you. Yourself?
Yes, not too bad at all. I'm keen to dig into this PDF. I'm so glad we didn't have to swim through all 100 plus pages. But yes, hopefully we'll be able to uncover some highlights to, save some other people some time as well, but also have something quite cool to take away.
Yeah, and I think this year's report is especially interesting because we're seeing the adoption and normalization of AI just
Yes.
substantially increasing time over time as it's becoming more accessible. It's becoming more mentioned in mainstream media, and we're kind of probably on the precipice, really, of it crossing the chasm effectively into being a mainstream tool and not just a early adoption tech enthusiast kind of adopted element. So first thing I want to touch on is really just kind of how we're spending time with the internet, so to speak, how we're going online and interacting. Because again, over the past couple of decades, that's greatly evolved. Smartphones have increased that more. So the average daily internet usage stats are quite interesting that have come out in this report.
Yes. So just looking quite broadly, so focusing on UK adults, for example, we're seeing a total time spent in, May of 2024 of 4 hours and 20 minutes. But that obviously can be easily split up across demographics naturally, because there are some people who over and under index for different groups. So young adults, by that very nature then, so you're talking about your 18 to 24-year-olds, of which I no longer am a young adult, which is a shame by the nature of this report, are looking at an average usage of 6 hours across our internet. So that has been and will probably forever be consistently kind of accruing upwards. And then we've got the also the adoption of the 65 plus, which is 3 hours and 10 minutes on a daily basis, and similarly as well a demographic that is kind of seeing that kind of growth curve kind of increase. Now, it's almost one of those things when it comes to internet usage where it's like, well, as more things become digitized, then naturally, the adoption of the internet kind of does its thing, whether that be everything from cashless societies to the Internet of Things to, other, historically less internet savvy industries start catching up. NHS, those types of things start to happen, and the digitization of the nation continues to kind of grow. But that's just a broad overview as to how much time is spent online.
I think what will be interesting as well is, especially for me, where the internet isn't that old. I mean, I think, and I hasten to reveal this out loud, I think we're both older than what most modern home internet connections were. We're both older than Windows 95, let's be
I
honest.
like that you said most modern.
Most
So,
modern.
yes.
I mean, I still remember getting AOL internet on a CD-ROM attached to the front of a magazine as a freebie. So, yeah. I think as just generally, the
Yeah.
numbers that we see, especially around like young adult adoption to lesser in older demographics, is something we'd probably expect to see. But I can probably see that normalizing over time. So we're always probably going to see weighting towards the younger demographics. But
Yeah.
for example, you and I and our generation, we're going to still be online 65 plus. I doubt our internet usage is going to decrease unless we finally get bored of it and take up fishing or something like that. But just by our nature of our upbringing, we're really kind of one of the first online generations. So it's going to carry through. So if
Yeah.
anything, it's becoming more online, and we're going to see more daily active users will increase, monthly active users will increase. Like you said, as more industries become digital, as things become cashless, just as the
Yeah.
society general change moves that way.
Yeah.
Building off that, then, and kind of as I kind of touched on, especially with something else we've seen in the last 10, 15 years really kind of increase, I mean, I remember having a MySpace page, for example, way back when, and that is just kind of around social media usage. And one thing I find interesting, I mean, outside of the data, it's where people are spending their time, but also the fact of, I mean, Reddit, by the nature of this report, is classed as a social media. I mean, that's an argument for another day of what Reddit is actually online. But Reddit seeing a 47% year-on-year increase in usage across UK adults. That's phenomenally large. And the fact that they estimate that if you compare that to something like Threads, which obviously Zuckerberg and Meta released on the first wave of abandonment from
Yes.
the good ship X, that reached 1 in 10 within a year of launch.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of new penetration happens. If you think how when Facebook first came out, I remember Facebook first becoming accessible in the UK, and I remember creating a profile on it. And I remember literally sitting there thinking, "Oh, this is cool." I mean, I went straight back to MySpace, and how quickly that kind of changed over. I think interesting to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think social media is a really interesting one because I think we're experiencing a bit of a saturation point. I think now, yes, when a new network came out, we all flooded towards it and kind of check it out and see what's going on, and it usually brought something new. And I think what we're seeing with social media is almost the same thing that's kind of happened with mobile phones. Back in the day, you had an LG chocolate or an N95 or whatever, N25, etc. And so then they were vastly different, and they brought something new to the table. Whereas now, for example, we've got Blue Sky for that is looking to replace X, etc. But it has very similar features, if not the same community, etc. And you're almost like downloading it just for FOMO as opposed to it actually adding any value. So I do think there will be a saturation point with social media where we will really look at the social networks we're using and start to look at what value do these social networks actually physically bring to me as a user. And so therefore, where do I want to spend my time? So I think from a marketer's perspective, that is something we need to be very wary of as well, because you can't be a brand that is everywhere at all times as well. There's only so much resource you can have within your teams. So it's worth having a little look and understanding it to your audience and saying, well, what value will this channel bring to my audience? And if it doesn't bring value, don't be there just because people are there, or the numbers, say that this thing is growing, or just for that FOMO effect. I do really think that 2025 specifically is going to be that kind of the year of social value.
I think you hit the nail on the head with kind of the value side of it, because I mean, Blue Sky has benefited greatly from the second abandonment of the good ship X, but it's been mainly been driven by users wanting to be in a community online which better reflects them as individuals. And I think this is something not just social media platforms are going to be facing in 2025, but most companies are, in terms of just their general marketing strategies. And like you said, you can't be everywhere all the time. So it's which platform not only has the most users, because I remember I remember doing social media management 10 years ago and used to look at platforms and focus on the wider TAM of it. So, well, they've got 100 million users, we can potentially reach 100 million. And I think this is going to affect influencers potentially as well in 2025 of who actually has the most, not just for the largest headroom, but who has the most value, who has the most intent, and who has that. Because I mean, we see now looking at different social platforms of like you immediately think, oh, LinkedIn's a place to go for like B2B stuff, but I'm seeing a lot of development related keywords and development stuff actually starting to surface on TikTok now, weirdly, especially things around continuous integration, continuous delivery framework. So it's a weird one. I think it's a refresh we've probably needed, because, like you said, we've hit a saturation. We've done the whole everything everywhere all the time, and now we need to reassess what success looks like and actually focusing on the markets we want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, grow what we're looking at there. So Reddit experienced a 47% year-on-year increase. I also think that obviously Google mothership had quite a bit to do with that, but I do think that these social networks per se, or platforms, or community-based platforms, are really seeing a bit of a revival from a perspective of we're all kind of crying out a little bit for human connection, I think, and getting that human answer, and which kind of naturally spills over into our next topic. But I do think that is the central reason I think those types of community platforms are doing really well, whether it is Reddit or whether it is like Twitch or Discord, etc. We are trying to bring the social back into social media, I think.
Yeah, and just kind of add just some of the numbers from this report, kind of flavouring into what kind of our opinions are on this. So, Alphabet and Meta combined accounting for about 48% of total online time daily that users were engaging with. Alphabet itself, so the Google ecosystem, that was just over an hour daily, but interestingly, that was mostly driven by YouTube and not other kind of Google products and things like search. Meta also contributed around about an hour. Interestingly, with that, they also then broke it down. So there's still heavy usage on like Facebook, Facebook Messenger, and then probably about a third of our overall time was towards Instagram and WhatsApp, which is very important because obviously when Meta AI properly launches, that's going to be, I mean, Meta's got such a high penetration rate across all user demographics anyway, that's going to be quite impactful. The interesting one for me though was Reddit in the UK, especially by numbers overtaking X, but also as LinkedIn to actually be the fifth most used social media service. Now, given the abandonment from X, I'm not overly surprised at that, but the fact that Reddit is having more internet time, according to their survey, than what LinkedIn is quite interesting, especially when, as an SEO industry, putting that kind of hat back on, we're talking very much about like Reddit optimization and Reddit's obvious massive growth in Google search over the past kind of year. That's interesting that not just the search results have increased, but is it kind of horse leading the cart or cart leading the horse for this one? That because Google's rewarded Reddit to the point it has with visibility, has that driven this growth, or has this growth been driven by users and Google's responded to it? That's probably the chicken and egg. Sorry, not the cart and horse, but yeah.
And I guess you look at the neighboring platforms in order to kind of figure that out, right? So this is where we're talking about your Twitches, your Discords, and other community-based platforms, and seeing their growth over time. And I think Google actually probably spotted a great opportunity within that market in acquiring Reddit, and it's quite a smart thing of them to do. But yeah, I do think from this perspective, looking at the wider market, it's definitely a community-led piece.
No, definitely. Well, that kind of brings us on to the last kind of topic we want to cover from the report. Like you said, it's about readoption and people wanting to move to new things. And this is focusing primarily on the adoption of LLM and generative AI tooling.
Favorite bit.
Yeah, the hot topic at the moment with everything. But no surprise, the report, even though it came out in focused on data really up until May, ChatGPT is the most popular tool. 37% of online users, interestingly, aged between 8 and 15. So there's 8-year-olds using ChatGPT, which
this is why I found this so interesting, because I think that right at the beginning we we're talking about like the usage of internet, and realistically we the report in itself as well kind of focuses around like your 18 to 25s as that young demographic, right? We're almost imagining as if the day that you turn 18 is when you get your wireless connection, your password comes through the post, and you can access the internet as an adult. But the adoption of the internet has got younger and younger and younger, and will continue to do so as generations kind of grow, and products and parents want to entertain their children, and things like that, right? So this is really interesting though as to how it's kind of spilling over outside of that entertainment piece, where you probably use the internet as a child to watch Bluey or whatever that might be. Now you've got 8-year-olds using ChatGPT, arguably at school for education, for knowledge acquisition, for the replacement of search engines. Like, this is where we need to really start understanding what is that value to your audience as they move on throughout their life, because arguably I don't think anyone would have ever looked at that stat and then saw age 18 to 15 and went, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the other side to that as well is just looking at it from a more target market perspective. So about 1 in 3, and it was very broad list, but 1 in 3 16 plus in the UK are using ChatGPT. 18 to 24-year-olds are the highest adopters. 1 in 4 are engaging with ChatGPT at least once monthly. Copilot, which didn't surprise me, has reached 15% of UK internet users, age 16 plus. So for me, reached is the interesting topic there, because what classes as a reach, because it's on default on most Microsoft things now. So I guess they've at least filtered out the, what was it, when was it you two who
I
forced the song download?
exactly yes.
Yeah. Like,
You open your phone and
did
you're
they
like,
technically
okay.
reach 80% of the world, or did they impose anyway? Gemini from that side as well. They saw rapid growth, so they reached 1 in 10 within 6 months of launch. I think that's telling that Copilot, which was already reasonably established, only reached 15%, but within 6 months, Gemini was 1 in 10. I imagine that number's a lot higher now, kind of 6 to 8 months further on. But the interesting stat, the one which really, so we can talk about the penetration, and the penetration is there for all to see, and we can see penetration and adoption increasing. The main stat that really made the AI whole study for me interesting from this report is that only 1 in 5 found the information from any generative AI tool they used reliable. So
Right.
with the immediate, obviously, we're very much at the birth of a new kind of AI era, as I'm kind of phrasing it. So we're seeing the high adoption because the novelty's there. It's for, let's try this. But then only 1 in 5 is finding it reliable. So do you think if we're seeing that level of, cool, high adoption, low trust, low perception of reliability, will that lull potential future adoption, or will that just lull usage temporarily until it improves and improves reputation again?
Yeah, I definitely think that it won't lull in any way, sense, or form. I just think that we live in a generation at the moment where, once again, we've got social media saturation. There is, mass news across any platform. You can post whatever you want about whatever you want, whenever you want. And so then actually, as a humanity, we're kind of going through this idea of, I should probably fact check this first, type thing, right? And naturally, right at the birth of something of this level of intelligence, there will be hallucinations, there will be errors, etc. And so, combined then with our distrust of like current news platforms and information sources, etc., there will be a little bit of a trust period where AI is kind of learning and catching up, and we are kind of learning to understand its limits and what it has the ability to actually deliver. But I don't think it's going to lull in any way, sense, or form. It'll absolutely fly. Like, I remember when we were in school, and it was like, don't reference Wikipedia. Oh, don't do that. Like, it never stagnated or stopped Wikipedia's growth in any way, sense, or form within the educational sector or whatever it may be. You just knew that Wikipedia at that time, its place was a great source of inspiration to start researching further into a topic. And so then it played its role really, really, really well. And it hasn't seen any downfall off the back of that. And, that was the one thing that was hammered into us in education.
Could we see, just based on what you said there, this is just literally thinking out loud, could we see Wikipedia lose that position as being that initial jumping off point for further research, which we were educationally trained? Because a lot of AI is being used for information gain and research, and we're seeing that in the report across sections. So will users, rather than going to Wikipedia or typing in topic and then Wikipedia on the end, or wiki, start just abandon that initial journey and go towards the LLMs?
So this is really interesting because I have spoken to a couple of quite a few, a couple of hundred students actually, around a topic similar to this, around when you are producing academic work, specifically looking at graduate level. Where do you go firstly for your resource, or where do you go firstly for your information, inspiration? It has and is growing that it is this type of ChatGPT platforms ultimately. The reason being, like, it's just with Wikipedia, you were at the mercy of the style of content that was served to you, whereas now I can personalize my own ideation. And I guess that's the real powerful thing, because now I can be super, super, super specific. The likes of Perplexity and ChatGPT and the likes and everything else that's kind of out there really allows me to, personalize my own research journey. And that is exactly what students are kind of doing and jumping off on now. And do you know what? Even their teachers as well, when I speak to teachers around like classroom content creation and stuff like that, like even from their perspective too, that is very much where they kind of go to as a jumping off point. So yeah, I think so.
Well, on that final conclusion, I guess we'll call this video to a close. Please let us know in the comments what your thoughts are on the Ofcom Online Nation report from 2024. what your thoughts are on what we've discussed in relation to AI, in relation to social media adoption, just in general, what your thoughts are on how you think all marketing channels are going to evolve with that. So without further ado, I'd like to say my name has been Dan Taylor. Thierry has joined me very briefly. Thierry, yeah. If you do like this video, please do drop a like and please do consider subscribing to the channel. It means a lot and helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. But on that note, I wish to say thank you very much for watching.